holding space for us.
Yes, yes. How's everybody feeling today?
Great, great.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, is there someone else who might want to give another minute or two? We want to give them a minute or two, or?
It's fine.
It's fine, okay. All right, so I guess we can introduce ourselves. I'll do the honors first, okay. So my name is Tanasia Pope, and oh my goodness, whenever I introduce myself, I have to be intentional about explaining why I introduce myself in this way. So I'll give you a little disclaimer first, right? So I think that so often, especially in our culture, just mainstream culture in general, current day, when we introduce ourselves, we introduce ourselves in our titles, our personas, all the things we do. And so for me, a big part of leaning into my femininity, right? Because we all have both sides, both the masculine and the feminine within us. But a big part of me leaning into that is recognizing that I am my being before I am the things that I do. I'm always, that who I am. And so in my being, I have always been a gentle, nurturing, more sensitive, even emotional person. I didn't always find comfort in expressing that as being my language, right? And actually sharing that vulnerability is a part of just who I am in that way. And always feel it was safe to do that. But it is a big part of who I am. It's a big part of how I go about all the things that I do. It is my being. And so, with that being who I am, what I do is I am a wife, I am a mother of four, I am an author, and also I am a sacred woman practitioner. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Queen Afua. Okay. So I have been holding space for Sisters in Circle with Queen for a few years now. Right? Since pandemic, this has really been something that has been identifiable in terms of need. And so I'm actually currently pursuing also my yoga certification, which actually next week I'll be done with that. 200 hours has been a ride, right? And in alignment with my king here, he and I have a community that we call the Divine Collective. And like I expressed, I know I gave some cards out so far, it's a co-ed experience where we hold space for both women and men, and then together as well, and we'll tell you more about that too.
Keep going.
You got it, you got it.
So I am James Pope, beautiful woman's king, partner in life. So Ashley said she is a practitioner of Queen Afua, which during my journey she started, and I wanted no part of it. I will walk past her and she'll be doing her calls and talking to things that I don't really understand, and I'm like, going to watch the game, I'm going to watch whatever, I'm going outside. I really wanted no part of it. But what I saw over a time period was a transformation, and something I didn't understand. So I'm like, her answers to things are getting different, her body language is different. She's talking about energy, she's talking about these different things, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little intrigued, but I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's something for a man, because I see, a lot of queens on the call, and I'm like, I don't think it's really for the men. So I really didn't connect yet. She called me a couple times to connect. I'm like, nah, you go ahead, that's your thing, not mine. And then I passed the laptop one day, and there was a guy speaking. It was Baba Harulil speaking, and it was something that he had said that just caught my attention. So I was like, let me sit down for a second and hear what this guy has to say, because now it's a male figure. I just want to hear what they're saying, because at first I'm like, you're talking about feelings and sensitivity and attachment. I'm like, that's not me. That's not, it's not what men do. This is what I thought, right? Because, men in the environments we grow up in, and women too, but environments we grow up in, it's detaching from feelings to try to survive. You show feelings and that's a weakness, right? So throughout my whole life, and I'm probably 40 something at that time, right? 42, 43, whatever it is. Spent 40 years of my life detaching from emotions. I've been in the military, they teach you how to detach from emotions. So now I'm listening to all this and I'm like, a emotion, sensitivity. I'm like, all right, but let me listen to what he has to say. Now they start talking about, the connection of energy, the universe, all these different things to kind of take it back and understanding what are your traumas in life that you go through that leads you to who you are today. Now I start realizing, like, wait a minute, so maybe I should understand more about feelings and attaching to feelings. It's not a weakness, right? So I sit down, I give it a chance. It intrigues me, so I go to the program called Man Heal Thyself, which is the offset of Queen Afula's program. And I have to say that, all the men joining, I feel had the same type of feeling. Like, you don't want to be vulnerable because as men, you're around other men that you don't know, and who wants to really share stories that you don't feel safe yet. But as time went on, it started feeling safer and safer. You start hearing other brothers talk about their stories, and you start seeing similarities in what leads us to who we are today. And the craziest thing that came that started understanding for me was, how could you attach to feelings with your partner in life if you are detaching about life and feelings? So how can I understand when she's feeling a way about something, even something I'm doing or something I'm not doing, and I should be there to be her support, and I can't because I don't feel what she feels, and I can't even understand why she's feeling that. So I'm like, why are you even feeling that? Like, just move on, let's push forward. Where we come from, you gotta just move forward, push forward, right? Only the strong survive. But really the strongest people are the ones who attach to feelings and understand it, so you're able to heal from it. And then once I started learning that, I'm like, wow, heal? What's healing? So again, it goes into a whole big thing. I can talk for that, but I won't. But what we do is we're building community. We're trying to bring brothers and sisters back into a community so we can understand how to heal together and separately. At the end of the day, we're all partners in life, and we have to really understand each other, especially if you're trying to be around for a little while with a partner and really share life. Life is hard enough, jobs, kids, bills, everything else. Your partner really has to be able to connect and understand what you're going through to be able to be a support for you. And we'll get into that because some of the things that we've learned through our journey is even languaging, right? So we'll talk about how our languages, sometimes we don't speak the same language, but we think that we do, and that can become the biggest hurdle or challenge. And once we start speaking the same language, a lot of things we could be able to understand each other a lot better in relationship.
It's so true. So one of the things that we've learned, and just background, James and I have been together 19 years. And so it's been a journey, right, of us learning and expressing and growing into different people. And so kind of like having to be almost reintroduced to each other every few years, because you grow, you experience new things, you have new needs you didn't know you had before. And what we recognized in our relationship is that we were both already master teachers. Because I've shared, right, that my life experiences definitely shaped me and molded me into this being that is very sensitive, right? Sensitive, not so much that I would always express it, but I would feel it, right? And I didn't always open my mouth to speak it, but it would be there. It would be there, be holding back the words, holding back the feelings. And so with what you heard from James, where he and his life experiences were the opposite, right? Growing up in a very street culture, right, where he's outside and it may not be safe to appear as a young man at that time, at least, right? Safe. You wouldn't be safe to show your vulnerable nature outside, right? So the world was shaping his life experiences to be detached. Meanwhile, mine was completely attached. So the yin and the yang here have met, right? So you could imagine the duality of us trying to teach each other how to love each other, right? Because I need your attachment, and he's like, but that's not what I do, right? And he needs me to detach from all the things that go on with the kids and myself and the family and all the nurturing that I do, so that I could just be warm and nurturing and feminine for him. But I can't do that when I'm not supported in all that I have going on vulnerably, right?
Can you say really quick too?
Yeah, and I'm gonna hand out while you speak.
Yeah. So just talking about that, right? When we talk about attaching to your femininity, right? So what I've noticed and throughout our journey was she would go to work every day and she's in an environment where she's dealing with such strong masculine personalities. So what do you have to be in an environment like that work. You have to become that type of personality to deal with it, right? Because it's the same type of thing. I say talk about the street and being weak, but it's the same thing in the corporate environment. You have to be able to have a voice, be strong, have a presence, right? Because these guys and people, they're not gonna let you in or even hear your voice if you don't. I expect her now to come home from work and shut that off. How do you shut that off? Just like that, right? But a lot of things in life have changed. When I sit back and I look at life, the structure of life is not really, and I won't get on this, but I say this all the time, we're not supposed to live the way we live, right? It wasn't intended to get up on this rat race every day and run to work. And just hustle and stress and all these different things. We're really meant to be connected to the earth and be natural and flow with the earth and with each other, right? But this is the life that we are living in, so you have to understand, like, how do you expect somebody to have the switch just to turn it off when they have to deal with that constantly every day? Their mind doesn't turn off. I'm sure there's so many things about work, kids, bills, all these different things that's running through your mind, but then now I need you to shut it off and be soft and be sensitive with me and be, physical and nurturing and all these things, but I'm not worried about what your day was and what you had to go through. So, that was just something that we had to connect on. Understand?
And so it led into the work that we do. We recognized that there was a ton of love and a lot of passion between us, but it could show up in two ways, right? It could show up in making us closer, or sometimes it could show up in really pushing us apart. And so we had this inherent knowing that we didn't want to be apart, right? There was a lot of fruit that came from us being together. We grew and we were growing in positive ways, even though it felt very difficult to do it together. And so what we didn't recognize was we didn't see other people going through what we were going through in our relationship. So I grew up, my mom was a single parent. James had two parents in the home, but his mom was very, what would you, I guess, describe her as in terms of her voice?
She didn't have a voice because my father was the voice. He's a Southern man from down south, and it was his way or no way. So she didn't have a voice. And that's what I thought a woman was supposed to be. So when I'm looking for a woman and a wife, I'm looking for my mother. I'm looking for when I speak, that's it. But I met Tanasia because I'm thankful for that.
It's interesting how energy does attract, right? Because that's who I am, right? I am a soft, nurturing person, but I was in my survival for so long, right? I was also a single mom at the time that I met James. I had my son. He was, now he's 23. He was, 4 years old, turning 5 at that time. And so I was a teenager when I became pregnant, so I was 19. I gave birth to my son, I was 20. So I was very much in my survival, and my entire adulthood, womanhood, was around motherhood. And I didn't really recognize the differences in all of it because it was all happening simultaneously at the same time for me. So I think our energy attracted, but our physical beings had other worldly things that were going on with us that were creating some detachment in what we wanted.
And let me just say really quick, so how the universe works is, when we met, in 3 months, we moved in together. And she had her son, my son, who was turning 5, and I had 2 sons at the time. That was 9
and 3.
And when we met, it felt like it was supposed to be that. Like we knew when we met each other that we were each other's partner. And it happened so fast, and in 3 months, I don't know,
everyone thought we were not.
Right, so it was crazy. But 19 years later, we're still going, and so,
for sure.
And we've grown. So as Tanasia was saying earlier, 2 people are always going to grow. She can take a step forward. I can stay here. She can take another step. Like I said, I was walking past her while she was taking steps. I decided I don't want to grow this way. I want to go that way. So, and it doesn't have to be the same, right? But, as my queen, I needed to understand we both need to evolve, because as she was a young woman, I was a young man, and not by just age, by growth, because in my environments, we didn't take time to really understand what evolution of a person, of a man is, especially if you don't have the role models to even pull me there. My role models are people on the street. So, you know, my goals in life was getting an apartment that was cheap, because I came from the project. So if I get an apartment that's $500 a month, I made it, you know? Meanwhile, my queen came from a house, I never thought about a house or a yard
I was like,
or
I
kids.
can't imagine like bringing how do you get your groceries to the 12th floor? You know, like in my mind, I'm like, you know, it was very different.
Right.
Our ideals were different, even though the love was there. But to your point, we were both very emotionally immature.
Yes.
So I knew how I felt, but I didn't know how to express it. And that attracted a man who was hoping I wouldn't, right? At that stage in his life.
Can you
So-
say that again?
So I knew how I felt, but I didn't know how to express it. So I was quiet about it, you know? He recognized that energy because that's the energy his mother gave. She had no voice, right? So I attracted a man who wanted me in that version of himself to stay that way.
So that was.
But I was in my early 20s and I was growing into my voice. So now as I grow into my voice, I'm doing so fearfully, but still doing it because the concern, like he said, sometimes I stepped forward, I didn't know if he'd come along. And I had to think about, you know, I love him and I'm growing in this direction. I don't know if he's gonna grow with me, but I had to not allow that to stagnate me and to do it anyway. What I come to learn after that is just like plants, as I grew towards the light, so did he, because I became the light. Right? So now it's even more illumination on him. How I reflect him back to him is different, right? So if he says something in, let's say, non-affirming language, and I reframe it in a new way, just by being a bystander, he's learning now from me, just the same as my children were. And so our relationship started to evolve. He then stepped into the light. He started seeing his own triggers and traumas, right? It's easy when someone combats you in a very aggressive way to be so put off by their behavior that all you see is their behavior. But when now you're showing up in your, let's say in your darkness, and it's being loved, right? Like someone's loving you. Now it makes you question, wait a minute, do I even deserve this?
Right.
You know, why am I showing up in this way? Do I want to do things any differently so that I can continue to receive this love and light in the way that I am? But here's a few things. So we handed out a sheet of paper, and what we've come to realize, and I know James mentioned this, is about language, right? And I know, show of hands if you are familiar with affirmations. Okay, so if you're familiar with affirmations, even at the most foundational level, you are aware that words have power, right? And sometimes there are words that we use in our urban culture, Black culture, mainstream culture, whatever you want to call it, right? That become somewhat a universal call to action, and we don't necessarily realize it until we take a deeper dive. So what we did on this page here is we just gave just a few, just 8, right? Just 8. So these are some statements that people often say, which will place us into misalignment with what we actually want out of our relationships, right? So the first one starts with one that James and it was a real big awareness for the two of us, which was, I want to be loved in my love language. So show of hands if you've heard of love languages, whether you know what they all are or not, you've heard of it. So there was this book, right, the 5 love languages, and everyone, you know, who read it or heard about it or just saw some bullets on it made a choice, right? You decided on which one of those love languages you most identified with. So for me, I decided mine was not in the book. I was like, nope, none of these.
Create it on.
It's not here. You know, this book is great, but it's missing some things because I am not represented in it, right? So I saw it to mean that I thought my love language was advocacy. I want a man to put his cape on, or, you know, to have his armor on, a knight in shining armor, to come in and help correct my problems. And if he can't help me, then I don't understand why I would be with him. So that, you know what I mean? Like, that was my thinking of
Wrong,
love
right.
language. Wrong, and at that time in my life, I'd say it was, right? You know? And I think sometimes, and I'm glad you asked me that, because sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to change our mind. To say, yeah, I thought like that, and that worked for me at that time. I needed that at that time. It kept me safe, it kept me whole, right? It kept me focused, it kept me on, whatever it is, you know? But I've changed my thinking since then. James, what was your love language?
So I thought mine was physical. And just a backstory to that. So, right, sometimes our love language is through trauma, right? So, backstory to my upbringing really quick is, so I had both of my parents, and at 3 years old, I was dropped, my sister and I, who was 2 years older than me, she was 5, I was 3, was dropped off at a family member's house and left. We didn't know these people, we didn't know who they was, I didn't know they was my aunt, my uncle, I didn't know any of them. They were down south somewhere, and I just saw my mother walking out the door. And she left us there, and we didn't really see her physically again for like another 3 to 4 years. So as little kids, we saw them leave, and my sister and I ran under the bed and we started crying. This lady that we don't know is kicking the bed, get from under the bed, I'm gonna beat y'all ass. Excuse my language, but beat y'all asses. And I'm like, what? And I can remember this is 3, but I can remember this vividly. Like to this day, how I felt, how my sister felt, we're holding each other, we're crying, we know who these people are, where did my mother go? That's trauma. I didn't know it's trauma. Because again, you know, growing up, these are not things that you sit with. You understand it, you get rid of it, and you move on, because life is life and you gotta get out there. So that left me with this trauma of wanting to be physically held, loved, right? Because my mother did not do that, right? So this is what I wanted, and I thought that was the language that I'm looking for, is physical. But it turned out that wasn't the language that
And
I
so,
needed.
you're right, and so my journey was, my mother was also a teen parent, my parents were teen parents, well, going to be. My father was actually shot and killed by police officers. January of 1981, said that that's still going on here in Queens, New York. He was mistaken, they thought he had, you know, a weapon, and he was killed. It was front page news during those times, and my mom was pregnant with me. And she was, to say that she was wounded as a woman would be an understatement. She was, in addition to having lost her high school sweetheart, the father of her child, she was the first woman in our family that was going to be unwed, with child, you know, so that she had all the weight of all of that. And so, much like women do when we're in emotional imbalances when we're pregnant, we try to stuff our emotions away, put them away, stuff them down, because we don't want to transfer those feelings to the baby, right? Well, my mom was one of those women who she did a great job of stuffing those emotions down, but then trying to figure out how to reveal and pull them back up and feel again after I got here was something that she's still working on, right? So for me, I was always longing for an advocate, right? I would always be the little girl who saw the other little girls who had their dad at the park, right? I'd be the kid who'd be really sad on Father's Day when we're all making a Father's Day project, but I don't have one. And I'd also be the one that's like, well, my mom's not able to be here today for this performance that I'm gonna be in, and she's not in the audience when I'm in elementary school because she's gotta work. So I was looking for an advocate. So I said to myself, that's my love language. When love shows up for me, it's going to be an advocacy, but that was my trauma love language. That's what the wounded version of me needed. The wounded version of me needed someone to save her until she saved herself. And when she saved herself, now everybody else is extra. All the love that she's receiving is extra, and it's not all hitting this bottomless, endless pit. So now I would say, am I more healed, right? Because I do believe healing is a journey, right? We don't get to a place where, oh, it's all solved, right? Because once you think that, then something else surfaces, right, to work through. So am I more healed version than my past unhealed version of myself? I recognize that. I believe my love language at this juncture, because reserving the, you know, ability to change my mind, is now actually, what is it? Acts of service. Acts of service. Because it's not so much that I need, in terms of advocacy, that I need you to do for me, but I do recognize that I grew up in a family that there was a lot of love, but it wasn't always spoken. It wasn't always, I love you, I love you, I love you. It was shown in what we did for each other. So that's my most, I would say, innate love language. And what would you say your love language is now?
And just before I get to that, so just to understand that, so acts of service is something naturally that I did.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
right, but because it was not recognized,
Let's go.
it was almost like, you know, it became something that was a battle, because naturally I'm doing things, I was just in my soul, my spirit, no matter what it was, I wanted to do for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the littlest things. It could be open the door. It could be, you know, no, don't touch that garbage. Don't grab that out. Whatever it is. But you say you're thirsty. I'm getting something to drink for you.
Yeah.
Just because naturally I want to take care of my queen. But the act of what I'm doing, I'm thinking I'm doing a lot. You know,
I
and
didn't
this
give
is,
him credit for it.
but I wasn't getting credit for it. And I'm like, why am I not getting credit? I don't understand. Because I know everybody ain't doing this out here. You know what I'm saying?
That way.
I mean, I grew up around a lot of guys. They ain't talking about what they doing, right? Like, I'm like, and I'm doing this naturally because it's in my spirit to do it. I'm not forcing it. But I'm like, I mean, recognize this is crazy. I'm like, man, you know, but again, this is in the unhealed version, right? So that became a challenge. But when we started breaking down these barriers,
Yes.
right? And I can remember like when you started recognizing it and saying it, I mean, just to hear somebody say, you know, thank you for doing that. Or, you know, I see you. I appreciate it. I'm like, what you saw me? All right. All right, now I feel good. You know, it makes me want to do more. And you feel good. Not that I need it, right? Because now I'm on a journey and I'm healing myself from my own trauma. So, you know, back to that part is, you know, you can't look outward for something that you need to go inward, right? So even in my traumas of healing, when I thought I needed physical love and all that, I need to love myself. You know, that's the first thing I need to do is love myself. Anything else outward is on abundance of what I'm already giving myself. So now I'm not looking for it and I need it, right? When I get it, I appreciate it and I'm thankful for it, right? But it's not a hole, it's not a pit, because what I was doing was I was filling myself, but it never felt like I would be full, you know? And it was with outside stuff, you know? And just to be honest and transparent, you know, it's a lot of things, especially for guys. It could be attention, right? It could be, I need to be the best in everything that I do. So, I mean, that's how we're raised though, competition, right? I need to be the best. But it's really because I'm trying to fulfill something in myself that's a hole. And it just never was filled until we went on this journey and I started understanding what healing looked like. Now I'm starting to heal myself and I'm loving myself. And now my queen, the love, I can see it now. And I'm like, oh, okay, I recognize that. I appreciate you, you know, for being the way that you are. Now I'm able to see her in a different light and she's able to see me in a different light.
It's so true. So we were, I guess, you know, in conflict with each other because we were both fighting both the love that our unhealed version of ourselves wanted.
Right.
And it wasn't until we started healing that we could see the love we actually had was what we needed.
That you already innately had.
We already had innately,
Yes.
that's right. So James didn't recognize that his love language was words of affirmation because I wasn't even giving them. But once I started to say, oh wow, I appreciate it, right? Because it meant I had to heal and see that I don't have to do it all myself, you know? I can sit back and recognize that, wow, even though I didn't do it, it got done, you know? Or there would be things that I didn't even think I needed that he would then do. And because I wasn't looking through the window, only looking for advocacy, I could then see what he was actually giving me and his way of loving me. And I recognized, oh, that's actually what I need and what I want. So now when I'm saying it to him, he's like, oh, now I recognize I desire to be told that. So now we recognize that no, my love language was not advocacy, it is actually acts of service. And his love language was not physical, it was actually words of affirmation. But we were showing up in our unhealed version. I think you saw it here.
No, you answered it.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy you
Okay.
didn't stop and.
Yeah.
And just to you know, go a little bit further into this. So, you know, things like this, and I'll go back to community, right? Because this is what community was previously, before it was stripped away from us,
Indigenous societies.
right? You know, they would come around just like this, you know, in a circle, and we were taught from our elders to the youngest. And you will learn just about things like this, right? I wouldn't have to learn about, you know, how to get from this street to that street without getting shot. You know, I wouldn't learn how to go to the courthouse and stop an eviction, right? These are not things that you know, are taught in that community because they're a community growing up together and they're attaching to feelings and stories and sharing things. So again, back to what we, you know, are trying to do in our community is just bring the world back together, that one piece at a time, right? I speak to brothers, sisters, she speaks to brothers and sisters, but you know, for me, no matter where I go in the store, you know, energy is real. And I can remember how I was, because you're trained to be a certain way. You walk inside of a store and I can look at another brother, but my energy says, he's looking at me more, all right, there's gonna be a problem. So I see what it is, now I'm on my guard now, right? But as I started going this journey and I walk past a brother, my energy is different. So you're gonna feel my energy. You could look at me and I could look at you, but my energy ain't gonna say there's a problem. my energy's gonna say, what's going on, brother? How are you? You know what I'm saying? I don't know you, but I know you. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, we're all family, right? But we don't operate in that way because we're not taught to operate in that way. But again, you know, community is what we used to have before it was stripped away. Little by little, hopefully, you know, we could bring that back little by little. Not just us, I'm saying the world.
Yes. And we're not all love and light. We keep it real in our community, right? So I'm just gonna be honest, right? We all desire to live in the light, right? But the reality is we also live in the world. And so we're gonna be dealing with some things, and it's about learning the tools to help us move through it, and also building relationships, not just with others, but with ourselves and the community, like James mentioned, so that we learn how to support each other, right? We call it holding space, right? Not here to fix each other, but just here to listen and be of support. So that was a lot to tell you about number one, right? I want to be loved in my love language. So the misalignment there was sometimes what we label as our love language is actually how we learn to survive. Right? So it's really about getting on a healing journey, allowing yourself to heal through what you've gone through in order to really reveal what your truth of your love language is. The next one is you complete me. For folks that might be looking for someone else to complete them. Yeah, I think that many people, especially post-pandemic, having to sit down with themselves, realize that there is really no one, right, that is going to fill you up, as James, mentioned, other than you. And depending on your spirituality, and we say spirituality versus religion because we recognize that there's a balance. There are some folks who might, spirituality for them might be based in religion. Some is just in their personal beliefs, right? But whatever your spirit is saying to you, right, it is saying to you. And it's never gonna actually get the answers from others, So that's why we hold space, but we don't tell each other what to do, right? Then there's the love is 50-50. So the misalignment there is that sacred love is not about splitting energy equally at all times. It's really not. Because the reality is, it's a balance, it's a dance, right? There are gonna be days that I'm gonna be depleted.
Right.
There are gonna be days that James is depleted, right? All we can do is show up and give today's 100%. Whatever that looks like today. On my best day, I was off all week, I was on staycation, I went to the spa, and I ate grapes, and I had water, and I fasted, and I caught up on my shows, whatever it is, right? That 100% Tanasia might be very different from the one who just came in from work. She sat in an hour and 40 minutes of traffic coming from Canarsie all the way out to Suffolk County, right? And so we have to be able to recognize where we are in order to determine what our true 100% is gonna look like that day. James cannot expect me to show up like on a day that I had to do all the traveling and commuting, right? The same as on the day that I had a few days off, right? So we have to level set our expectations for each other and not really set a bar of 50-50. It's 100-100 based on whatever that 100 is for you that day. All you can do is your best.
Very well said. I've never heard it that way.
Then the other is, I stayed because love is hard. That good old struggle love. Well, that's how it's supposed to be, right? What we're basically doing with that is we're romanticizing pain. Telling ourselves that we need to linger in spaces that feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is calling you to your awareness. It's like if you have a discomfort in your knee, it's calling its attention, right? To say, hey, do something about this. I need to be checked on. So you don't want to just ignore it, not in your body, not in your spirit, not in your emotions. Next we have, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Okay. I had to step into that one, because that's how we say that, right? So the misalignment there is that this can excuse harmful behavior or avoid self-accountability, right? So these are the folks that say, I am how I am. You knew how I was when we got married. You knew how I was when we went out. You knew I'm not about that. Oh, why you want romance now? I didn't do all of this in the beginning. I didn't, right? So those that want to deflect and not see it as an opportunity just to grow. We're always healing, we're always growing. Yeah.
And that's back to the point that we were talking about earlier, where I saw you growing.
Yeah.
And I said that. I used to say that, right? Like, this is how I am. I'm my dad's son, this is me, so you're gonna take me or leave me.
Exact words, yo.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
put it on a t-shirt. That's
You know, I was very strong in what I felt, you know, at the time again, but it's all coming again from that unhealed place. But these things are so like, when you hear it, it's like, wow, I used to say that. It's crazy, right? But,
Yeah.
we grow.
It's so true. We grow. And so that all of these have what we call a sacred reframe, right? So the sacred reframe on that one would be, I invite love that holds space for my humanity, while also encouraging my evolution. Because what we're really saying when we say that is, I can't be perfect.
Right.
I can't do it all. I'd like to be your superwoman, your superman, but I can't do that, right? So we want someone to see us and know that it's gonna ebb and flow, that we're still human, but we also want to be called into our stuff, right? Spoken out on it so that we can be called forward to grow.
Right.
You know?
I have a question. May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
To this point of, you know, you knew who I was when you met me type of energy, right? I think a lot of times people are searching for consistency. And I think a lot of times when you are searching for consistency, what you're really saying is like, I want you to be consistent, so don't change. The pressure of that, you know what I mean? The
Yes,
absolute
yes.
pressure of that, you know, because for a person like me who, you know, I have an issue with failure, right? You are extending, I don't know if other brothers really understand this or ladies understand this about men. When you extend that you are failing because you aren't consistent, because this is all I had to do today, this is all I had to give today, it's like a time bomb in some people's brains. For me, it's like, well, listen, bro, I moved heaven and earth just to sit here.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think when I hear that, for me, it said, oh, you're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed for your intention to even be seen. Yeah. So that's what I heard. Now I'm done.
And thank you for calling us to
Right.
pause on that, because that's a big, powerful statement. It really is. And it's true, right? It's like we all want permission
Right.
to just go with the flow of what's actually real for us in the moment.
Right.
And not be held to some other version of ourselves yesterday, you know, whenever it was, right?
Right.
But to be human, the humanness in us, the humanity. Like, as a woman even, right? When James and I got together, I was 24. Now I'm 43, right?
Stop lying, girl.
What- Thank you. But, you know, there are things that I know about myself I didn't know when I was 24, right? So when he would say to me, well, I didn't do all of this when we got together, I was like, I didn't really know I wanted you to. I didn't really know that I needed you to. But I'm telling you now, right? I'm telling you now. So it's like, you know, that's where that whole getting to know each other over and over and over again, for some who came in maybe a little after we mentioned it, we've been together 19 years. So there's been lots of different versions of us that we've met. And we've been blessed because we keep falling in love with the new version. You know, but we have to be clear on who we have to get to know each other all the time.
And to be honest, right? It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not always easy, right? Listen, I always say, you know, there's a lot of things that I would do and I wouldn't even see that I'm doing it. So I would put the blame back on her, not being accountable for my actions, right? And it would only make me even more distant to be like, well, you don't even take the time to know me, you don't know me. But again, you know, when we talk about falling in love with each other over and over, you love each other. That's the consistent, right? But I remember Elder telling me this, and I never understood it when I was younger, about falling in love with your partner over and over. Like, love is work. It's not something that just stays there and it's all flowers and rose petals every day, because that's not the truth of it. Maybe if he was back in our form that we're supposed to be in nature, maybe it would be, because life would be different. But in this version of what we live, it's not, right? But I love the point of growing in different ways, and then your partner being able to look at you and fall in love with that new version of you, and then sparking something in yourself that you didn't even know was there, so that you can evolve. You know, I always give my queen 100% credit, but not just me, but our household, Because if she didn't go on her journey, I wouldn't have changed. My daughter wouldn't have then became a sacred teen. And at a young age, to have a daughter, how old was she when you had 12?
Turned 13.
Turned 13, right? How impressionable at that age a young woman is to be able to tap into her spirituality and start understanding these things about herself. She sees her mother going through it. They saw her father, like the father was the rough around the edges one still, right? But now he's changing. She used to say that like, you talk different. You know, I see you act different. I can attach to feelings now of what my daughter's going through, you know, in certain things where I probably never would have been able to do that. So she gets to see the different versions of her parents actually evolve as well. So those type of things are, when we talk about modeling, is something that is so impressionable for our kids even growing up. And just to talk about her age when we met, 23, 24. I think about it every time I hear that because our oldest son just turned 27. My son from my previous marriage, again, is our son because he came into this as a blended family and we are one. If you think about that, I look at him and I'm like, to understand the mindset of a person at that age, at 24, and what I thought, you know.
Because you would not expect him to have all his
Absolutely
ideas
not.
together, but he expected it from me, though, right?
Exactly.
As his woman.
Right.
But now when we look at our kids, it's
Right.
like, wow, that wasn't reasonable, you know?
Right.
We can see that in each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all part of what the journey's supposed to be for everybody. You know, everybody has a path.
That's right.
This conversation today is for a reason.
Yes, it is.
I spoke to a brother the other day who I don't really know him that well. He's a friend's boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, unfortunately. But I didn't know him, but I reached out to him and talked to him real quick. And he's like, I'm so embarrassed because you seem like such a good man, and whatever's happening in his relationship, I'm almost embarrassed that you gotta even be involved in it. And I'm like, brother, don't be embarrassed, because we're all one. I am you and you are me, right? Trust and believe that I sit in your shoes and you sit in mine
That's right.
in different forms of and ways in life. So this conversation was meant to happen. It may not even be that you stay with that woman, but this conversation that we're having was meant to happen for you. For you, not about the relationship that you're having, because the relationship we're talking about is really with yourself.
That's right.
He has traumas that he doesn't know about, and again, then back to I am you, because I was there and didn't know my traumas, right?
I can spot it 'cause I got
And
it.
I can spot it because I got it. But this is how the world works. Once you start awakening, and I remember people talking about, you know, your eyes opening, being able to see things you never saw before. Once you open them, you can't unsee it, right? And then now you feel it, you see it, and it's not an obligation. You have in spirit. You want to share with the next brother. You want to help the next brother, just like somebody helped me open up your vision so you can see yourself in the highest version. You know, like I told him, I said to him, I said, you know, inside all of us, as far as brothers, you know, we're kings. Like by nature, we are. But we don't operate in our higher self because we don't know how to connect to our higher self. So once we start awakening and we operate in our higher self, that's when we can take that version and imagine your highest version with your queen's highest version and what that's doing for your family and your community.
Okay.
So,
Yes to all of it.
yes.
You know, and so when we look at now going on to the next one, I attract emotionally unavailable people, right? So this one is centered in victimhood, right? It's saying this is just what I'm attracting. It doesn't give any emphasis on what am I doing or not doing, what am I seeing or not seeing. What is the onus that's placed on me for being also a part of this experience, right? It makes it seem like I'm attracting this person and they're the issue versus why am I attracted to that person? Why did I attract that person? And then it puts you in the ownership and the driver's seat to say, oh, there's something I want to look at deeper and investigate in myself in order to correct this, you know? Then there's the good old, I'm a ride or die. Glorifying loyalty and dysfunction. We've seen it on Power. What other shows? Right? Like, all the shows, okay? Ride or die, loyalty, tattoo it on your neck, right? That kind of a thing. And the reframe, right? The reframe on this, the sacred reframe is, I ride for peace, reciprocity, and restoration, not chaos. So it's not that we're not riding, but what are we riding for? I used to say to James, you know, when we first got together, just never, I think I said early on when we were dating, I was like, I'm not your ride or die, because I want to know why. You know, like I'm in the passenger seat and I'm like, well, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna ask questions, and you know, like, I'm just not that, so I've always just instinctively felt like something is off with that, even when I didn't necessarily know what it was, right? But the reality is there are some causes I'm a ride for, and then there are some that I'm simply not, you know, right? So it's really about getting more specific about what we're riding for. And then the last, and there's plenty, right? These are just the main ones that we know are popular, right? Culturally. I need someone who will fight for me. Ooh, we love a good Lifetime movie where somebody's got to fight to be over in the Christmas one, the holiday one. Oh my goodness, right? She got on the plane, she took the job in Seattle, he's got to go to the Bronx or whatever. And, is it gonna wait, is it gonna work out or not, right? He needs to fight for me, girl, okay? Here we are, right? Right? So the misalignment there is, this can indicate a craving for proof through conflict. People need to prove themselves to you through conflict.
Say that one more time.
Here we go. This can indicate a craving for proof through conflict. Why are we looking for the proof that you love us through conflict? Right? Oh, I was trying to argue with him, he was watching the game. He didn't stop and argue back with me. Right? I'm like, I'll be on the phone talking to my auntie, sister, whoever. Oh my goodness. I was telling him and he just acted like it was not even that big of a deal. And because I'm in that moment not recognizing that I craved the interaction. I wanted him to get worked up because I was worked up. What's the matter with him? Oh, it must mean because he doesn't care. That's why he's not all worked up. I'm sweating and, you know, he's not worked up because he doesn't care. Well, it's not an indication that he doesn't care at all, right? It's just an indication that he desires peace. Imagine that, okay? So that's the sacred reframe. I welcome someone who will stand with me, not fight battles that peace could resolve. I see we have a question or
Not
a thought.
necessarily a question, but
Okay.
how can we say, like, if we're not able to communicate without the conflict, how do you know that what you're feeling is being received and vice versa? Like, he wants the peace, you might want the peace, but then there's still an issue there. Like, how do you come together when you're hot, he's not, and then there's still not that resolution, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, we like to call it neutral discussions, right? So there are times that you have already set aside to just kind of check in with each other. And that can be whatever you need it to be, as frequent or infrequent as you need it, right? So if that's weekly, cool. If it's a month, you know, every other month, that, you know, whatever works for you. But the idea is there's a designated time, whether it's over dinner or it's just, you know, sitting together on the couch, that we're gonna just talk about how things are going. And if we have the designated time to do it, then we don't have to have the hot button discussion while it's hot. You know, because a lot of times if I am, well, I'm to speak for myself, right? If I'm emotionally charged, I'm not always even listening. You know what I mean? So there could be things that he's saying very simply to me, and because it's so simple and it's not all worked up like I am, right, that it just didn't connect for me. So having those moments where there's nothing going on, we're not here because someone's already been offended, and there's a neutral time to just kind of talk about how things are going and check in, that's been beneficial.
And just, okay.
And usually it's the morning for us.
So you all talked about having new versions of yourselves as you two continue to evolve and fall in love with one another. Like how does that operate? Do you two recognize like, oh, this is a new person emerging? Do you like acknowledge it, like verbally saying, okay, honey, this is somebody new.
Yeah.
Who is
Yeah.
she? Like, do you all verbally acknowledge like I'm seeing something new here, and to give me a time of
So
adjustment?
really quick, so I thank you for that, because I was gonna actually go into that, so, but this is how it works, right? So you asked the question I was just about to speak to. So, you know, when we talk about the hot version of it happening in that moment, I can remember us having those battles, and my wife is from Queens. Hollis, Queens. Anybody know that? So when it gets hot, right? So, but again, that's what I attracted, because that's where I was from, and that's what I wanted, right? But what I learned was when she went on her journey, because it's about yourself, right? When she went on her journey, and something that normally would have been that hot conversation, it wasn't. And she stopped, and it was, I was like, wait, it's different. So I sat back, and then I recognized, and I said, babe, you know, babe, I gotta give you a lot of credit, because normally you would have been, it was a frying pan, something coming. Like, that's what it's wrong, right? But you know, I had to acknowledge it and you know, and recognize it and say, I see you, you know? And now that made me react different. So now that neutral conversation sometimes can come in the real time of the conversation because of the way she acted. Now, when you talk about, you know, reciprocity, that makes me want to do the same thing. Normally I'm about to get hot, I'm like, you know what? Let me return whole space as well and calm down for a second so we can have this conversation.
That's so true, babe, but it's because we had the difficult times, the challenges, that we recognize it.
Right.
So we know what the triggers are.
Right.
And we recognize when it's not a trigger anymore.
Right.
You know, that it's getting a different response. And then the other thing is sometimes the changes aren't negatively exposing. Sometimes it's just simple like, oh, but I want to do something romantic. And he's like, since when? You know what I'm saying? Because again, at 24, romantic was that he came in, he picked me up, and we went out to eat and whatever. And now I'm 43, like, we need to catch a flight to go to, you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, right? But just meaning that, giving myself permission to evolve and grow and to have new interests. And even though our relationship, we've been together so long, I have to let him know that. When I say this to him, he's just like, we didn't do this in the beginning, right? And there's a lot of reasons why we didn't. I had to say it because it's a real situation for us, right? Where I would say I want to vacation more, and he'd be like, well, but since when did we become vacation people? Since our kids are grown, since our youngest is 16 now, you know, right? Since now we have the financial means to do it, we didn't always, right? So there were things that we weren't considering doing simply because we didn't have the means and the ways to get it done. But it doesn't mean that I didn't desire it. I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on all the other things we were getting done. So now I'm saying this to him, and he's like, oh, wow, okay, so this is new, right? So like that. It's like,
there's an adjustment period?
There is, because, you know, James is not a person who loves vacation, right? But we don't know that. Right?
What?
I didn't even know that was a thing. You gotta recognize when you see stuff.
I was just trying.
The whole time you're talking about vacation, I'm like, hold on.
That's why there are girls trips, right?
Yes, yes.
That's the compromise.
That's why.
I'll drive you to the airport. I'll be there when you get off.
But the reality is, I didn't get to know that, right? He didn't know that about me, right? And I didn't know that about him because it just wasn't a thing, because it wasn't a consideration. It wasn't something we had the means to even do, so why would we be talking about it? I'm not even looking at vacations. Because why am I tempting myself when I've got goals over here that I need to be focused on? So that's later on now, right? What, 15 years down the road, I'm like, I really love vacation. And he's like, when? Since when?
When this start.
Right?
But also, you know, to go into that, right? To think about what romance is, to break that down as far as at 24 years old and at 43 years old. Now, for me, again, I may not have grown. My romance, what I knew at 25, 30 may stay the same. 35. Hers grew to be different. I'm like, oh, that's what you're looking for. That's romance. I was like, you know, I'll bring you flowers. I thought that's romance, right? I just don't catch a movie, you know. But you know, romance changes. Here's the part again about, you know, growing and understanding, like, all right, I may not go on every trip with you, right? You have the girl trips, and hey, we can compromise and do this other trip and do this other situation. It's compromise. It's give and take. You know, find what is good for both. Because at the end of the day, you know, I don't think anybody that you're with a partner that you love, it's not that you want to disappoint them. You don't want to be on vacation with them on a beach somewhere and, you know, having a drink or whatever, and just, you know, you want that. There may be obstacles in the way of getting there. So how can we get there together? Compromise. You know?
So, I mean, it's been a journey. It's been a beautiful journey, right? You can say that in hindsight, right? When you look back on all the tests, all the challenges, and you realize that they were lessons that have made us both better, right? Today, when we left, it's just the small things that really light up my heart. So today, when we left our house, our daughter, who's our youngest and only daughter, right? We've got 3 sons, and my daughter, she said, I heard her say to her dad, she goes, Dad, could you guys record, could you record it so that I could watch it back later on? And it just, like I told you guys, right, I was the daughter who didn't have the dad, so for me, it's so self-fulfilling to have healed to a place where our relationship can be so healthy that our daughter doesn't want to miss moments like this, and she's just 16, so that's been magical.
Right, and to that point, to take it back to the community again, because I always talk about community. So my side job is cutting hair. It used to be my full-time job, but I had to go to corporate and get benefits and stuff like that. So, but I still cut hair, but the reason why I cut hair now is for that interaction, especially with the youth. Right? That time with young men to just sit and they open up. I have a neighbor that comes, he's 8 years old. He told his father, don't come with me anymore to the barbershop. This is my time, with Brother Polk, and I'm going. And his father, we're good because he entrusted me and I'm honored with his son and that growth period, because sometimes young men don't want to tell the father certain things, but they'll open up to somebody else, right? And in community, again, we don't have that. So these type of things where I look at our own kids, and I love the modeling that we have for that, but I look at the world, right? Because we are community, right? And just one person that you touch, that's all you need to touch. And maybe that person touches another person. It continues like that down the chain. When you talk about, how do you always say it? Not breaking generational curses, which you said.
Patterns. Breaking the generational patterns.
Right. So, it's that type of things, those interactions that mean a lot, especially for myself, not even for just the youth, just for me being able to talk to the next generation.
Yes. And I host sister circles, right? So I know that in this experience, we also bring in I Am Yogi, which is Lisa Robinson. She's incredible. And in Queens, in the same neighborhood I grew up in, right? She opened up the first hot yoga studio, first Black woman-owned hot yoga studio. And so every second Sunday there, I host a circle like this for sisters where we can sit and just connect and think and speak through the things we're healing through. And it's been a joy. It's been a joy. It's what I did with my aunties, right? It's what I did. My grandmother, she had a salon and still does on Hollis Avenue, and that's what that was like. That was my after-school program, right? So I got off the bus, right, and I walked into my grandmother's salon, and I sat there, and they would have on the stories or the news or Oprah or whatever they were watching, and they would have these discussions, and then it wasn't the formal setting of a circle, but that's what was happening in there, right? Some of their hair was done, or they didn't have an appointment that day, but they'd be there, Yeah, so in a lot of ways, we need this. We need each other. We need to trust each other again, and build community from the inside out. And so we have handed out some cards to you all. You'd be happy to know that the community we've been speaking about, there's a QR code actually on the card. I don't know if you all have one, but we'll make sure you do. It's no cost, right? Because we don't want to create any barrier between us and our healing. As brown people, we have enough barriers, right? So it's definitely, I would encourage you, join the conversation with us, join the contact list with that QR code. We'll be starting back up on June 1st because we do it in 12-week posts, right? So 12-week runs for the program. And the way we meet is once a week, the kings meet, just the kings. And once a week, the sisters meet, just the sisters. It's all done virtually. So we have sisters and brothers all over the world that, are part of it. And then once a week, we meet together. And that's where we get our practice, because oftentimes we're doing it separately and we never get to really be supported in doing it together. So on Sundays, those calls, they get interesting, y'all. Yes. And it's been beautiful because we have nurtured relationships either into fruition where people have met and actually grown in love, and we've also been able to nurture people in separation that also felt like love. Like people who knew that, we recognized that we attracted each other at a stage in our life that we weren't who we are today, and if we had met in this current version, we likely wouldn't have been as attracted, right? And that they can separate and do that in love and support and community, that's there for them. So we would love to have you all, because this room feels so warm, like literally and figuratively. So, oh yes, thanks for pointing that out. So actually, on the back of the page, also ahead of, so on the bottom, you see our book. This is our book, and it's called The Alchemy of Shadow Work, Sacred Relationships Unveiled. And it's a book that James and I wrote together, and it reads like a journal. I'm what they refer to as an eco-spirituality coach. So, although an eco-spirituality coach. So I am a Christian woman by faith, right? But I hold space non-denominational, meaning it's open to all women of all different, backgrounds and religious beliefs and belief systems into it. And what we do is our connection is nature. So we go out in nature. I do all the teaching of forest bathing, circles, reconnecting with the water purification ceremonies, gardening, all those things. And with James being a wellness enthusiast and then also a wellness warrior himself, what we did is we packaged both of our just innate resources here so that if you want to go on a journey of building a relationship with yourself and nature, you can do that with our book. And you can also go and sit in the park with your divine mate and ask each other questions. There's meditations in there. There are links to our YouTube that have meditations. If you don't want to have to speak it and you just want to sit back in the grass and you want to listen to it, all of that is there for you. So that's actually the QR code that our sister here pointed out on the back. So this is for our books, but we also have some here for you. Thank you, Nancy. I would love to just kind of give you all some. So thank you. We really do appreciate being here. One of the other things we believe is that, right, that we focus on mind, body, and spirit, right? So everything that we've already discussed here today, we brought it up to our awareness and our mind. We brought it into the nerves and the comfort or discomfort in the body, and we have to move and work it out. So I'm gonna turn it over and reintroduce James.
Do we have time for that?
Yes, we'll get that done so that.
I feel like
Yeah. So.
Wrap it up.
Yep.
Yes,
I feel the energy
Right.
Yeah, that's why I said
you got it.
we won't do
So
that.
we're gonna do that now.
Because that takes 5 minutes to do. That's-
Do we have 5 minutes?
No.
Okay, all right.
So we'll just leave you with this, so just really quick. We'll leave you with this, just understand this. So we talked a lot about words today, right? And what words have power, right? Go deeper into that. Behind the words that you're saying, the energy that's inside of you when you're saying the word.
Yeah.
Mean what you say. Understand, even if you say the word and you don't mean it, where's the power really coming from?
Exactly.
So it's internal. So again, thank you guys.
And there's some
for giving us
on
time.
the back, guys. Thank you.